Hello everyone, how you doing? I was at the Call and Contact Center Expo last week and I did a speech. It meant a lot to me actually because it was the very first one I've done purely on the basis of get out a rap. I've normally done it for BPA Quality, the company I work for. This was the first time that I did it just as me, myself and I. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to share with you the slides because it's something that I'm really passionate about. You won't be surprised to know it is about team leaders, but I just thought I would use this setup to be able to share with you what I presented. So it was called the Magic Weekend, and as I quipped on the day, this wasn't a throwback to when the university football team I was in, we went to Amsterdam on our way to a tournament where we subsequently lost every single game, predominantly because of the weekend in Amsterdam. It wasn't about them. It was my story that I think will probably be familiar to quite a lot of you. And that is, I was on the Friday, I'm one of the team. I'm one of my one-to-ones said that I was talented but a nuisance. So I'd reached the point where I knew I wanted to progress, and I'd gone for an assessment day for a series of team leaders that were being offered in the contact center. But I'd gone for developmental purposes only. That's how they let me in. They said, "We're not considering you seriously for the role, but you'll go for developmental purposes." So I went along with no pressure, and strangely enough to me, on the Friday, I am told, "Great news, you have got the job, and we need you to start on Monday." Now, over the weekend, magical things happen. I am bestowed upon me from the ghosts of contact center past all of the necessary skills, experience and behaviors to be able to manage 15 people effectively. So this magic weekend occurs. Friday, I'm told I've got the job. Saturday, Sunday, I'm given all these gifts. Monday, I am in front of the team and I'm confident and ready to go. Now, seeing all of 15 pairs of eyes staring at me and saying hello, I realized, of course, all of that was nonsense. I wasn't given any extra gifts. At that moment, I was more terrified looking at a team of people than I was stood on the theatre stage at the expo looking at probably about 30 people. Actually, it wasn't round. And knowing that I'm now responsible for all of their development, well-being, performance, I suddenly felt ill-equipped. And it should be said that at least half of that team I perceived were looking at me thinking, isn't he that loudmouth idiot from the team across the other side of the contact center floor? So, and I'm sure that this feeling of looking out at people thinking, hello, I'm your team leader, let's go, is a familiar one. And so initially I failed. I think within a very short period of time, I alienated half the team. A good third actively disliked me. And now, with experience and time and better understanding, I realize one of the key things is very quickly, I started with great enthusiasm, but very quickly, I realized that this wasn't 15 miniature versions of me. They weren't motivated the same way. They didn't like to be communicated the same way. They didn't like to be coached the same way. And they weren't as passionate about performance as I was. So I would be up there giving it the big, come on, we're going to do this, and playing games and developing, devoting a lot of time to coaching, but talking to people about progression, when in fact, at least half the team, probably more, thought very differently to me. So initially I failed. Now, you can tell this is me because of the roundness of my head. That's meant to be a briefcase. I never had a briefcase, but now when I look at it, it looks like a toilet brush, and I'm on the toilet. So my team's performance deteriorated, my mood deteriorated, and I would say that I was failing miserably in the role of team leader. Much like the Hunger Games, I survived. I realized what weapons I needed to choose. I adapted quickly. I was up for the challenge. I learned through experience and those mistakes, and I love the role. I said at the expo, this is less of a talk, really, more of a plea, a rant, that if we can help people get to the point of learning and loving the role quicker, we'll be in a far better position in our industry, because they appointed five of us, five new team leaders at that point. We just won a big new contract, and I survived. One other did, and one kept going for a bit. Two other people just said, "No, thanks. This is not for me. I want to step down," and one actually left. We can do better. I said, I bet you somewhere today at the expo, this sentence has been said, and there was lots of nodding heads, because you'll see it on LinkedIn, you'll hear it around the contact center, where people say team leaders are the most important people in contact centers. 100% true, 100% true. But what are we actually doing about it to evidence that? I would question not enough. I think we need to do far more for team leaders to better prepare them to take on what is a massive, massive job. There aren't many jobs where all of a sudden you are now in charge of 15, and in some cases up to 20 people. It's a hell of a lot. What do we want our team leaders to be? This is an interesting one. And I think whilst it has evolved over time, there's still a lot of this list was relevant to me 20 years ago. I can remember being told, right, this is a role, this is what we want you to do. And the list looks something like this. We need you to be a leader, a coach. You have to take on training. For our brands, you've got to be the one that understands the brand, understands voice of the customer, and be a brand advocate. You've got to be customer champion. You better be a good problem solver, and you've got to help us with recruitment. Oh, by the way, look after everyone's mental health, okay? We also need you to take on the quality monitoring and be a quality specialist. Be the person that fixes any IT errors or helps us when we bring in projects and new technology. You've got to be a HR expert and understand everything. And you have to understand the whole process that our employees and our customers follow. So you think, okay, that seems quite a lot. What I also discovered, and I'm sure many of you will feel the same, is in reality, whilst all of those things are true, the things that were more prevalent every single day were these. And that is that you are a social worker, you are a teacher, you're a parent, not biologically. You take on the parent role. You have to be a solicitor. I was kind of faced with challenges, and whilst I had support from HR in terms of being the first person that someone tells you something and how you respond, these were legal challenges outside of work or sometimes in work. You have to be a friend, and that's a hard line to navigate. My view was always, if I've got friendship should make being a leader easier, but I know that isn't always the case. You have to be a psychologist to understand people. You absolutely have to be a coach, but that coaching doesn't necessarily mean just in a formal sense. It means all of the time. You have to be an administrator. No one prepared me for the amount of paperwork I'd have to be filling out. You have to be help desk, as I've mentioned previously. You have to be a comedian. You've got to try and chivvy people along and make them laugh, or at least stoke the fires within the team. And when I say translator, it's not that there were people with foreign languages that I had to translate. It was a translation from the senior people in the contact center down to my team members. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I mean that in a way where team leaders can make or break a strategy. So if I went to a meeting and we were told about a new way of working, a new client, a new journey or direction for the company I was working at, and you get back to your team and the team say, what was that about? Your translation there, it determines everything. So if I would come back from one of those meetings and say, it's a load of bollocks, to be honest, that was it, game over. No, people wouldn't buy in. Or if you said, well, I can see what the company is trying to do, we're going to give it a go. It means we're doing this now, so there's going to be a bit of change, but we're going to be okay. Then people would be more prepared to give it a go. Dietitian, that's because surely everyone knows this. You provide your team with sweets and cakes all of the time, and you are actually the reverse of a dietitian. It's like you're fattening people up. And also the role I probably struggled with the most, which was to be the enemy. And you were the one delivering bad news or telling people where they'd done things wrong, and that took a hell of a lot. So a lot of roles to take on, and at a young age as well. So how well are we preparing and supporting our team leaders to do all of those things and to lead people for 8 hours of every day in close quarters under a lot of scrutiny? So I did some research. It's not just a mindless rant. And I looked at some of the organizations, probably less so the army, but some of the others where we might be not being able to attract talent. We should be talking to people about the great careers that they can have in a contact center. But if you just have a look at this, okay, the army, to go from private to lance corporal, so not even corporal, because it's at corporal where you really start leading people. And of course, I know there's a massive difference. We're not dealing with life or death in contact centers. So I get that. However, they undergo 3 years of extensive training in leadership to be able to lead other people. Let's look at Tesco's. To go from a shift worker to a shift manager is 1 to 2 years with a minimum 6-month training program, where you have modules that have to be signed off, and you do exercises and role plays, and you're put in scenarios where you can learn the skills needed to lead a shift. McDonald's, to go from a crew member to a crew trainer is 2 years, and again, another extensive training program. Now, interestingly, I think we should be saying, as a positive point to attract people, you can have a quicker path to progression. You don't have to wait 2 years. You don't have to undergo training for 3 years. You can get, if you're passionate about leading people or passionate about being a manager and progression, you can do it quicker in a contact center than you can in any of those places and retail that I've just mentioned. What I am saying, though, is we don't have the balance right for support and preparing people through training to get to those points and be effective when they get there. But getting a quicker path to progression is a real positive, and we should be talking about it more, okay? Now, I added this just to kind of gauge in the room what people, theatre, what people thought. This stat is taken from a great source, Contact Babel, and it's their 2023 projected average team leader salary, £29,500. I had no point to say on this really, other than this might make people think in the room, are you paying less than that, more than that, about that? For me, I would love it to be more. I think we ask team leaders to do so much. Let's not downplay the role. I think that, although that is a decent salary, but we are asking people to do a lot. I just wanted to add that in. Okay, what should we be doing? So I've made an acronym, and this is LEARN. So it's learning, emotional intelligence, academies, role, and network. And I hope some of this you may find helpful. So for learning, start your team leaders on a learning journey early. And what I mean by that is, don't wait until they are team leaders or even senior agents, hot talent that you've identified. For everyone, expose everyone to leadership-based content, to the kind of skills and knowledge that they will need to be able to progress. Now, for people that you expose to that have no desire to be team leaders. Why would you be doing it? Well, it helps you understand the kind of leaders that you expect other people to be who will lead them. In the room at the expo, I spotted 3 people that I think are really good trainers. We are awash in this industry with internal, external training talent, but we don't seem to deploy it that often. I would say we need to invest in training, and that time needs to be protected at all times. The development of people needs to be protected at all times. And what I mean by that is you must have been in your contact center where you're getting hammered through calls, and all of a sudden development and training stop. I did a judging visit once and went to a contact center that included training and their setup as part of their nomination. And then when we did some Q&A with people on the floor and team leaders, there hadn't been any training for 9 months for anyone because they were too busy. Now, if that excuse is being used in your contact center, then you really need to take a long, hard look at yourself, because you're never going to have good leaders if that's the first thing that gets thrown out the hot air balloon, if the hot air balloon's starting to drop a little bit. So protect that time at all times. Source leadership content and ignite a passion for learning. I will share with you creators on TikTok and YouTube that share in a very short way loads of content. It's all free, and this is how your team members are accessing training material right now. They're doing it today, they'll do it in their break, they'll do it this evening. If you just provide them with a list of 10, I can guarantee you they'll start following them and they'll start seeing their content. And this wasn't a shameless plug, because I am both on TikTok and YouTube. I've added LinkedIn in there as well, because people aren't often on LinkedIn when they're team leaders, and they really should be. So if you haven't, I would devise a little course to help people get on LinkedIn and make the most of it. But it's right there, it's free. You should be able to take your team leaders and potential team leaders to these sources and then just let them crack on. Emotional intelligence is the E. So emotional intelligence was talked about a lot in the expo, and it's talked a lot in our industry. And sometimes I wonder if people understand the component parts of it, which is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. If you only choose one thing to focus people on and to help them develop, it should be emotional intelligence. I want to talk on another session, maybe on a LinkedIn Live, about cultural intelligence, because I think that's now becoming equally important. But for right now, please start sourcing and getting your people to look at how they can improve self-awareness. There's a great book I read that was an epiphany moment for me. It's called Insight by Tasha Eurich, and it shows that self-awareness is a superpower. Once you are self-aware, then how do you self-manage? How do you manage your emotions? Social awareness. Your team leader role, you are constantly in an environment when you need to be socially aware. And relationship management, what does that look like? How do you maximize it? How does it help you perform better in your role? Now, the Harvard Business School said that we all tend to train people with technical skills and knowledge at a similar level. The determining factor between high performers and those that are not high performers, in 90% of the time, was those high performers had higher emotional intelligence. So you can train everybody how to do the job, but if you're not looking and working with people on their emotional intelligence, you won't have high performers. Academies. So we all know academies and grad bays. We do it for our new starters, where we gently, through baby steps and lots of support and role plays, and quality team come in, training team come in, aspiring team leaders come in, and we help people and stagger them, don't we, up to then taking calls in the live environment. And They absolutely work. There's many studies that have been done that shows it works. My question is, let's start. Why aren't we doing these for team leaders? And if you're not, put one together, put a template together as to what a team leader academy may look like. Give them smaller teams to start with, just to try out and see how they get on. Use your experiences and all of the resources we have to put together academies to help people get up to that point. The role. Let's start with the role. Now, I don't necessarily just mean all of those lists that I put at the earlier the part of the presentation. There's no science behind this. This is just my personal opinion, but I think 70% of the roles should be about coaching and development of their team. It shouldn't be admin. It shouldn't be getting weighed down with loads and loads of projects. 70% of the role should be spent with the team. You should be a visible, vocal presence within the team, and everything. You should then take everything else away that stops people hitting this 70%. This, I know, is a stretch. It's a stretch for a lot of people, but it will reap massive rewards if your team leaders are spending 70% of their time immersed in their team, collectively and individually, focusing on coaching and development. And finally, network. Give TLs time and the opportunity to engage in the industry. How many team leaders were at the expo? Not many, if at all. How many team leaders go to all of our different organizations that we have in this industry? The Forum, the CCMA, the CCF, the CCA, lots and lots of all the regional organizations. How many times do you let team leaders go on those types of things? Or even do you share webinars with them? Do you share white papers with them? The more that they are exposed to the industry, the more likely they are to stay engaged in your contact center. So we need to give TLs the time to come away and focus on the industry and focus on learning. So I hope that acronym helps. Our industry is a great one. You know that I think that, and you're only watching this because you think the same. It is a great one. Careers can rocket to many destinations. Most of the people that have come on the podcast are on the podcast because they've had great careers and they just love our industry. But a lot of the time, it is you've got there because you've got the scars to show for it. We can do so much more to help our team leaders. I am putting together, and it will launch in the new year, a team leader community where it will be online, and through just 5 minutes a day, people will be able, through peer-to-peer learning, but also it will be where I share all my content. I want to bring together team leaders, expose them to all of those things that I've been talking about, share webinars, do podcasts and events, and it will be accessible through an app and a website, and it will be at an entry level kind of I want to get as many people in there as possible. So if you are interested, please do let me know. One thing I left the audience with is I wanted you to go back and ask 2 questions. What do you need to make your job better? And how can I help you today? You'll be surprised at the answers you get. So if you're interested in the team leader community, and I will talk about that more and do some demos as we get closer to the new year. It's already been in test and lots of people love it. So please do let me know. But I thought, well, why don't I share this, the slides that I did. It went very quick on the day, actually. I was a bit hyper. So I've done this in a bit slower time. It's probably a record for the expo. If you were there and I didn't get a chance to speak to you, I'm sorry about that. Do just drop me a line, martin@getoutofrap.com. And thank you for listening.